Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another healing class guide. Before I start, if you'd like to see more healing guides and WoW videos, please hit subscribe. And like this video if it helps you in any way. Be sure to check out my other healing guides, which will be linked in the description below. Today we'll be looking at the Holy Paladin. Even though that this isn't my main, this is probably my favourite healing class in the game at the moment. I'll be going through the talents I take and the playstyle that you should be putting into practice. All information is from Icy Vein sources and from my personal experience. So let's begin. Holy Paladins specialise in tank and single target healing, with this being their primary role. They excel at this because of Beacon of Light and Holy Shock, as well as their efficient single target heals. They also possess several tools that help them migrate or avoid damage, both on them and on other raid members, such as Blessing of Protection and Devotion Aura. Holy Paladins lack mobility, but in general they are viable in raids and dungeons. So let's take a look at the talents for Holy Paladins. For pure healing output, the best talent in the first tier is Bestow Faith. Bestow Faith is an active ability with a 12-second cooldown. It places a 5-second buff on an ally, which heals them at the end of the 5 seconds, but which does nothing until then. Crusader's Might is a viable progression talent on many fights, especially fights where very predictable damage or mechanics. Light's Hammer could be used on counters where a large number of stacked raid members will sustain damage, but is quite poor on fights where the raid must spread out or move out of the active area. It is also fairly expensive compared to the mana efficient Bestow Faith. For tier 2, in raids, I believe the best choice is Rule of Law, which not only provides you with increased maximum range, but more importantly, also increases the maximum effectiveness radius of your Mastery Lightbringer to 15 yards. Unbreakable Spirit might be worth taking instead, but only if there are survivability issues that require more frequent use of Divine Shield or Divine Protection. Finally, Cavalier is a poor choice for raid content in general, but it could work on fights where you absolutely need increased mobility. For tier 3, the talents in this tier are completely situational, and you should choose them based on the requirements of the encounter. That said, you will generally prefer Blinding Light for the additional interrupt in Mythic Plus dungeons especially. The Mass Interrupt is extremely useful in those situations. Alternatively, it can be nice to use Repentance for crowd control in some situations, but Blinding Light is typically better. Tier 4. All 3 talents in this tier are viable depending on the situation. If a particular event may kill raid members, the 20% raid-wide damage reduction provided by Devotion Aura during Aura Mastery is both unique and invaluable. In addition, its passive effect will prevent a substantial amount of damage taken. As such, Devotion Aura should be considered as a default talent for the pick for this role. Aura of Sacrifice is a damage reduction cooldown that can be stronger than Devotion Aura, but has a weaker passive effect, and is not guaranteed to last the full duration. If your raid needs the extra damage reduction, Aura of Sacrifice can provide over Devotion Aura enough to also use your Divine Shield or a Protection Paladin's Blessing of Spell Warding to guarantee its full effectiveness. If no damage events call for raid-wide damage reduction of Devotion Aura, Aura of Mercy provides significant amounts of free healing over the course of the encounter, and useful raid healing during Aura Mastery. In Tier 5, for progression, we recommend Judgment of Light for mana sustainability, or Holy Avenger for another healing cooldown. Holy Prism is competitive, but is less mana efficient than either of the other talents in this row. As such, it should only be used on boss fights that are relatively short, and whose damage patterns and positioning particularly suit Holy Prism. In Mythic Plus dungeons again, all 3 talents are viable. For Tier 6, I recommend Avenging Crusader in a raid environment, as long as you have a target for your Judgment and Crusader Strike while the raid is taking significant damage. If that is not the case, then Sanctified Wrath is the best option. Awakening is only useful if the raid is taking consistent sustained damage, and is stacked up well enough to make good regular use of Light of Dawn. For Mythic Plus dungeons, Sanctified Wrath is superior choice, even though it provides slightly less healing, because the healing that it does do is entirely under the Paladin's control. Furthermore, Sanctified Wrath allows the Paladin to do more damage than Avenging Crusader. Now the final tier, for progression raiding, Beacon of Faith is recommended on this row. Having a beacon for each of the tank is incredibly powerful. It removes the need to swap the beacon between tanks during the encounter, as well as providing support to both tanks if they are both taking damage at the same time. Divine Purpose will be useful on encounters where only one tank at a time is ever taking damage, or you are consistently out of range of one of the tanks. However, for Mythic Plus dungeons, Beacon of Virtue is highly recommended, and we consider it by far the best talent almost every situation. The rotation and playstyle for Holy Paladins. Healing as a Paladin is, for the most part, all about using the correct spells for specific circumstances in which you find yourself, particularly with regard to how many raid members are taking damage, how much damage they are taking, where they are located, and what spells you have available. Single target / tank healing. Healing a single target is a matter of performing a few straightforward tasks. Always keep Beacon of Light on the target. Use Holy Shock on them on cooldown, use Bestow Faith on them on cooldown, and use Holy Light for low damage, and add Flash of Heal for high damage as needed, and as your mana permits. Naturally, if the target is not taking enough damage to justify using all of them above, you should instead use the spells to heal other raid members as needed. In case you are forced to move and Holy Shock is on cooldown, make sure you use Light of the Martyr to heal your target if they are at risk of dying, as long as it does not put yourself at risk to do so. To heal raid damage, make the use of your spells as follows. Keep Holy Light on a tank or on another target who is constantly taking damage. Use Holy Shock on cooldown. Make sure to use Judgment on the target on cooldown to keep the maximum uptime on Judgment of Light if you have this talent selected. Use Light on Dawn on cooldown, presuming the raid is significantly taking damage to justify it. Use Holy Prism on cooldown, assuming the raid is significantly damaged to justify it if you have this selected. Cooldown usage for Holy Paladins. As a Holy Paladin, you have several healing cooldowns. You should use them as I explain below. Avenging Wrath increases your healing done and critical strike by 30% for 20 seconds. It is very useful during periods of high sustained damage. Low on Hands should be used to save dying raid members, especially tanks. Blessing of Sacrifice lasts 12 seconds, transferring 30% of the damage taken by your target to you. The effect is automatically cancelled if the transferred damage would cause you to fall below 20% health. This cooldown is excellent for reducing the damage taken by a tank or other raid members. Be cautious, however, because Blessing of Sacrifice can be dangerous to your own life if used without damage reduction cooldowns such as Divine Protection or Divine Shield, or when raid damage independently threatens your life, such as additional damage being taken from Blessing of Sacrifice. Aura Mastery empowers your chosen aura, increasing its range by 40 yards and also improving its efficiency. It is a raid cooldown, and it should be used at a time designated by your healing officer or raid leader. Of Protection. It can be used to clear harmful physical damage debuffs and bleeds from the target. Be mindful of the fact that bosses will not attack targets affected by Blessing of Protection, so only cast it on the current tank if the off tank is prepared to take over. Blessing of Freedom removes movement impairing effect from the targeted raid member, which can be very useful in certain situations. The basic stats for Holy Paladin. The stat priority for a Holy Paladin varies based on your spell selection or fight duration. your proximity to your healing targets and your healing talents, I will give the general stat priority, then explain how much of these can change it for you. Having said that, secondary stacks are so close in value and intellect is so strong at current gear levels that an item level upgrade is usually worth equipping. The general stat priority is first intellect, second critical strike, third mastery, fourth haste, and fifth versatility. I will leave the Azurite talent choices suggested by Icy Veins in the description below, so be sure to check that out. So overall, I'm loving the Holy Paladin. It's strong in raids and it's strong in dungeons. I hope this guide has helped you get started with your Holy Paladin, and it encourages you to give it a go. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and if you'd like to see more videos, then make sure to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in my next video.